This is part 2 of the Miller's Tale. Who said what and whether they were believed, I shan't ever know, for at this point the reeve came back with a tongue like a fly swat and demanded that the miller be disqualified from the competition. He only told that story to spite me. I'm a carpenter, aren't I? I'm called Oswald, aren't I? I thought he was going to chew the ears off his horse, he looked so aggrieved. Then the prioress Eglantine chimed in. Ooh, you've made me blush, Master Miller. Regardez, monsieur, je suis blushing, she exclaimed, fanning her snow-white cheeks. By St. Loy, what a coarse story. She adjusted her wimple so that it set well back on her forehead. What we really want, she said coyly, is a nice story about nice people. No one will mind me saying so, but if we start having stories about lower-class people, we're bound to end up with nasty stories like that. We want a finer sort of story altogether. Glowing phrases, uplifting thoughts. I'm sure there's someone here who could tell us a story in the grand style. The miller scowled at her. Lower class of people, indeed. I suppose you want stuff about princesses and heroic princes galloping about on chargers, spouting bits of Latin. Prioress Eglantine sniffed. Fancy you knowing about romantic literature, a man of your low breeding. The lapdog sprawled across the pommel of the prioress's saddle began to wriggle and whine. Perhaps it could sense the feelings of Matt and the other working men towards its mistress. Dear, dear little fellow, lisped the nun. Has the nasty coarse man upset you? Brother John, the priest accompanying the prioress, rode his horse into the center of the group and tried to take the sting out of the quarrel. I wonder why poets do always write about princes and princesses, he said, as if he was thinking aloud. I vouch I could tell a story in the grand style about the most ordinary folk. Eglantine looked annoyed. Mon cher John, do we have to have another story about about squalid working people? The miller and his cronies growled menacingly. Brother John was unperturbed. I'll go one better, he offered. I'll tell you a story about a couple of common chickens. And you just see if it doesn't have all the romance of Venus and Adonis and all the excitement of Homer's Odyssey. Eglantine primped herself in the saddle and, getting out a small mirror, examined her face intently. A strand of hair had escaped her wimple. She curled it around one finger, and it looked most fetching coiled beneath her cheekbone. All right, John dear, but do make it poetical. You know how sensitive I am. So John began. There once was a small house miles from town. Its one room was dark with soot. Excuse me, said the Oxford scholar, but that doesn't sound like grand poetical English to me. All the words are so short. John, snarled Prioress Eglantine, this had better be poetical. Please don't distress yourself, lady, sir, and Brother John, patting down their anxieties with large white hands. I'm saving the poetry for the hero and heroine. And that concludes The Miller's Tale on page 25.